I looked at the man sitting across from me in the holding room and thought, he has no idea what I did for 22 years before I picked up a mop. Not a single person in this building does. And that was exactly how I needed it to be. The fluorescent light buzzed above us. The chair was hard. I had been sitting in it for 3 hours and 17 minutes. The officer had asked me 7 questions. I answered all of them with 1 or 2 words. Not because I was scared, because I had learned a long time ago that a man who talks too much gives away the only thing he has left: his advantage. This was not the first time I had been underestimated. It was just the most important time. And somewhere in the gallery, 3 young women I had not seen in 8 years were about to walk through those doors and prove to everyone in this courtroom that the quiet janitor they had spent 3 months trying to destroy had been building something they could never have predicted. Something that started 20 years ago on a night so cold the pipes in my apartment froze solid. Welcome back, alls. Get comfortable, grab something warm, and remember, the people in these stories always had a choice. They just forgot that so did he. Drop a comment and subscribe. You're going to want to be here for this one. My name is Thomas Keller. For 22 years I mopped floors at Lincoln Elementary School in Meridian, Mississippi. Before that I did other things. Things that trained me to notice details other people miss. But that part of my life stayed locked in a footlocker in the back of my closet, next to a pair of work boots, so worn the soles were held on with determination and a specific kind of stubbornness I inherited from my father. Those boots were 31 years old. I could afford new ones. I chose not to. They reminded me of something I needed to remember every single day. The night I found the girls, I was working a double shift because the other janitor, a man named Reggie, who had worked at Lincoln for 19 years before me, had called in with what he described as a stomach situation that did not require further details. I did not mind. The school was quiet at 9:47 p.m. I had the halls to myself. My mop bucket made a squeaking sound on the third wheel that I had been meaning to fix for approximately 4 months. I had not fixed it. The squeak had become familiar. I remember thinking that the silence felt heavier than usual. December in Mississippi is not like December in places that understand winter. It is a wet cold, the kind that gets into your bones and makes itself at home. I was pushing my cart past the gymnasium when I heard something that did not belong. It was not loud. It was the opposite of loud. It was the sound of someone trying very hard to be silent. I stopped. I listened. The squeak on my cart had given me away. The silence behind the gym doors became even more silent. That particular kind of silence is unmistakable once you learn to recognize it. I had learned in places I do not talk about anymore. I pushed the door open slowly. Behind the bleachers, pressed against the cold brick wall, were 3 girls. The oldest could not have been more than 10. She had positioned herself in front of the other 2. Her arms were spread slightly. Her chin was up. She was shaking. She was also ready to fight me if she had to. The youngest was maybe 5. She was holding a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. She was not crying. She had passed crying. She was in the place beyond crying where the body just shuts down and waits. The middle one was holding both their backpacks. 3 girls, 1 stuffed rabbit, 2 backpacks. 0 adults anywhere near them. I did not ask them what they were doing there. That would have been a stupid question, and I have never liked stupid questions. I said the only thing that made sense. There's a diner 2 blocks from here. They make pancakes until midnight. I am going there when my shift ends. I pointed to the oldest. You decide. I went back to my cart. I finished mopping the hallway. I did not look back. That is not a dramatic line. I genuinely did not look back. Because I knew that choice had to be theirs. At 11:14 p.m. I walked into Meridian Diner on 8th Street. I sat at the counter. I ordered coffee. Black. No sugar. The waitress, a woman named Doreen who had worked there for 16 years and knew my order before I sat down, looked toward the door. Thomas, she said quietly. You've got 3 small shadows. I turned. They had followed me. The oldest was still in front. The stuffed rabbit was now under the youngest girl's coat. I could see the ears poking out. I ordered 3 hot chocolates and 3 stacks of pancakes. That was the first night. I had no intention of it becoming the second night, or the third, or the 7,300 nights that followed. But intention is a funny thing. It has a way of rearranging itself around the things you actually do. Their names were Hannah, Grace, and Abigail. Hannah was 10. She had the eyes of someone who had stopped believing adults would help her approximately 2 years before I met her. She was not wrong to feel that way. Grace was 8. She was the one who noticed everything. She watched the way I moved, the way I spoke, the way I placed my coffee cup exactly in the center of the napkin, every single time. She was cataloging information. I recognized the behavior. I did it myself. Abigail was 5. She was the one with the rabbit. The rabbit's name was Pepper. I learned this on the 3rd night when Abigail finally spoke for the first time. Her first words to me were not hello or thank you. They were Pepper does not like thunderstorms. I nodded seriously. Neither do I said. Pepper and I have that in common. It was true. After 22 years, I still do not like thunderstorms. That is not relevant to the story. I just want you to know that was not a line I made up to make a child feel better. What I did not know that first night was that their parents had died in a car accident 14 months earlier. The foster system had placed them in a home in Jackson. The placement was bad. I will not describe how bad. I will only say that the oldest girl, Hannah, made a decision that many adults would not have had the courage to make. She took her sisters, and she left. She found a bus. She found another bus. She got them 90 miles to Meridian, because Meridian was the last place she remembered being with her mother. A field trip. A school field trip to a museum that closed 6 years ago. That was the plan. A 10-year-old's plan, built on memory and desperation, and a love for her sisters so fierce, it made my chest tight when I finally heard the full story. Which I did not hear that night, or that week. I heard it in fragments over the next 3 months. Because that is how trust works with children who have been failed by the system that was supposed to protect them. You do not demand it. You build a floor under their feet so slowly they do not realize they are standing on something solid until they have been standing there for a while. I did not plan to keep them. That is not how it started. I called social services on the 2nd morning. The woman on the phone said they would send someone in 5 to 7 business days. I remember the exact phrase, 5 to 7 business days. While 3 children who had nothing were sleeping on my second-hand couch. I hung up the phone. I looked at the ceiling for a long time. Then I took out the notebook I kept in my back pocket. A small thing. Green cover. My daughter gave it to me. I do not have a daughter. I had the notebook because I had bought it at a gas station. It cost $1.79. I still have it. I wrote down what I would need. 3 toothbrushes. Children's Tylenol, something for breakfast that was not coffee, clothes that were not the clothes they had run away in. I went to Walmart at 6:42 in the morning. I spent $217.64. That is what it cost to be ready. I remember thinking that the number should have been higher, that preparing for 3 children should cost more than that. But that was the number. $217.64. I still have the receipt folded inside the notebook. Some things you keep not because they matter, but because they mark the moment your life divided into before and after. The social worker arrived on day 9, not 5 to 7 business days. Day 9. By then the girls had been living with me for over a week. Abigail had stopped hiding Pepper when I walked into the room. Grace had organized my kitchen cabinets. Hannah had asked me if I was going to call someone. I said yes. I told her the truth. She nodded. She did not look surprised. She had been expecting it. I told her I would not let them go somewhere bad. I did not know how I was going to make that promise real. I just knew I was going to. The social worker was a young woman named Bethany with tired eyes and a clipboard, and the specific exhaustion of someone who had been doing a hard job for not enough money for far too long. She looked around my apartment. It was small. It was clean. It had 3 children eating cereal at a table that previously only seated 1. She asked me 28 questions. I answered all of them. She did not write down half of what I said. At the end, she sighed and said she would file an emergency placement request. It might take some time, she said. They're not a priority case. I did not react to that sentence. I filed it away. I would need it later. What happened over the next 6 months was not adoption. Not officially. It was something more fragile and more real. I became their foster placement. A 38-year-old janitor with no children of my own. A widower. Margaret had been gone for 4 years by then. Cancer. The fast kind. The kind that does not give you time to prepare. She would have loved these girls. She would have known exactly what to say to them. I did not know what to say. So I did what I knew how to do. I worked. I took extra shifts. I cleaned offices downtown after my school shift ended. I came home at 1:47 a.m. and fell asleep on the couch so I could be up at 6:15 a.m. to make breakfast. I learned to braid hair by watching a YouTube video 14 times. The first braid took 47 minutes and looked like it had been done in the dark during an earthquake. Grace told me it was perfect. Grace was a kind liar. I kept practicing. I never got good. I got adequate. Adequate was enough for mornings before school. I attended parent-teacher conferences in my work clothes because I came straight from the school. The other parents looked at me with expressions I learned to ignore. The teachers looked at the girls with the particular pity reserved for children who did not have real parents. I saw it. I said nothing. I made sure the girls did not see it. That is what fathers do. They absorb the small indignities so their children do not have to. Hannah was the first to call me something other than Mr. Keller. It happened 8 months in. I was fixing the chain on her bicycle. A Huffy. Pink. I found it at a garage sale for $15. The chain had come off for the 7th time that month. I was on my knees on the sidewalk. My hands were covered in grease. She came out with a glass of lemonade. She did not say anything. She just stood there. Then she said, "Dad, do you need help?" I did not correct her. I did not make a big moment out of it. I said, "No, sweetheart. Almost done." I finished the chain. She handed me the lemonade. We did not discuss it. That night I wrote in my notebook. Just 3 words. She called me Dad. I did not need more words than that. The part of me that had been empty since Margaret died did not fill exactly. But it stopped feeling like a wound. It felt like a room where someone had finally turned on a light. The years that followed were not easy, but they were simple. I do not mean simple as in without difficulty. I mean simple as in clear. The job was to raise them. Every decision was measured against that single purpose. Grace needed glasses. I skipped lunches for 2 months. I told her I was doing a diet. The diet was coffee. She got her glasses. Hannah needed a laptop for high school. I sold my truck, a 1998 Ford F-150 with 230,000 miles on it. I had driven that truck for 14 years. The buyer offered me $2,200. I took it. I bought Hannah a refurbished Dell laptop for $340 and put the rest in the emergency fund. The emergency fund was an envelope in my sock drawer. It had $1,860 in it after the laptop purchase. I remember the number because I checked it every Sunday night before I went to sleep. It was not enough. It was never enough. It was always exactly what we needed when we needed it. The girls grew. That is what children do. They become versions of themselves you could not have predicted. Hannah became fierce. She joined debate team. She argued with her teachers. She argued with me. I let her. I told her a mind that does not push back is a mind that has stopped growing. She won a state competition her senior year. I sat in the back of the auditorium. I wore a tie I borrowed from Reggie. I did not know how to tie it. I watched a YouTube video in the parking lot. Hannah saw me in the back. She smiled. Not the smile of someone performing, the smile of someone who sees the one person they wanted to see. That smile nearly broke something in me. I did not give it the satisfaction. Grace became steady. She was the one who made sure the bills were on the counter where I would see them. She was 12 years old and she had a system. She asked me one night if we had enough money. I told her we had exactly enough. I did not tell her that exactly enough meant I had $14. 22 in my checking account until payday. She studied my face for a moment. Then she said, "Good." She went to her room. The next morning I found $3.50 in quarters on the counter. Her allowance. She had been saving for a book. I put the quarters back in her room. I did not say anything. Neither did she. Abigail was the quiet one. She watched. She drew pictures. She drew our apartment. She drew the school. She drew me with my mop bucket and the squeaky wheel. She was the one who put Pepper on the kitchen table every morning while she ate breakfast. The rabbit sat on a folded napkin like it was a guest at a very important meeting. Abigail once told me that Pepper was watching for trouble. I asked what Pepper would do if trouble came. She said, "Pepper has seen a lot of things. Pepper does not need to do anything. Pepper just needs to be there so I am not alone." I understood that. I had a pair of work boots that did exactly the same thing. If you are still with me, do one thing. Hit subscribe. A lot of people watch and never do it. It costs nothing, and it means everything to us here. The girls graduated. One by one, they left for college. Hannah went to the University of Chicago on a scholarship I did not know she had applied for until she got the acceptance letter. She had written her essay about a man who taught her that dignity does not require an audience. I read the essay once. I did not read it again. Some things you can only survive once. Grace went to Vanderbilt, pre-med. She wanted to be the kind of doctor who treats people who cannot pay. She told me this on a Tuesday morning while I was making pancakes. She said it casually, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I burned the pancakes. First time in 8 years. Abigail went to Ole Miss. She wanted to be a journalist. She wanted to tell stories about people the world overlooked. She wanted to tell my story. I told her to tell someone else's story. She smiled. She said, "We'll see." That was Abigail. She never argued. She just waited. I stayed in Meridian. I kept working. The apartment felt big in a way I did not enjoy. I moved Pepper from Abigail's room to the kitchen table. The rabbit sat there every morning while I drank my coffee. I told myself it was because Abigail would want it there. That was a lie. I kept it there because I needed it there. The work boots stayed by the door. I polished them once a month. The notebook stayed in my back pocket. I wrote things down. Things I wanted to tell them. Things I did not send. The phone rang on Sundays. That was our day. 4 p.m. Central Time. They called one after another. Hannah. Grace. Abigail. 15 minutes each. Hannah told me about law school. Grace told me about anatomy exams. Abigail told me about a professor who said she had a voice people would listen to. I told them I was proud. I did not need to say more. They knew. 8 years passed that way. They became professionals. Hannah became an attorney at a firm in Chicago. Grace became a resident at a hospital in Atlanta. Abigail became a reporter for a paper in Nashville. I became the janitor at Lincoln Elementary who had been there for 22 years and who nobody really noticed. That was fine. I did not need to be noticed. I needed the girls to be okay. And they were. Until one morning in March when a police officer knocked on my apartment door at 6:43 a.m. and handed me an arrest warrant with my name on it. Thomas Michael Keller. Charged with embezzlement of $317,400 from the Meridian School District. I did not understand the words. I read them 3 times. Each time they remained the same words. I went very quiet. That is what I do when something is so wrong my brain has to rebuild the world around it before I can respond. The officer asked if I understood the charges. I said yes. I did not understand. But I knew that explaining this would require more words than a man in handcuffs gets to say before anyone listens. The holding cell was 8 feet by 10 feet. I measured it. I had time. The walls were gray. The bench was concrete. I sat there for 4 hours before anyone told me anything. A public defender came, a young man named Derek with a suit that did not fit, and the expression of someone who had 40 other cases and not enough time to properly handle any of them. He told me the evidence, bank records showing transfers from the school district maintenance fund to an account with my name on it, signatures that looked like mine, a paper trail that led directly to a P.O. box registered in my name. I listened. I did not react. I asked 3 questions. First, when did the transfers start? Answer, 8 months ago. Second, whose signatures were on the authorization forms? Answer, mine and the district finance director, a man named Gerald Hackett. Third, did they have the original documents or copies? Answer, copies. I asked for the originals. Derek said the originals were with the district attorney's office. He said it like this was a problem that could not be solved. I said nothing. I already knew what had happened. Not the details, not yet, but the shape of it. A man in my position with no resources and no connections does not get targeted for $317,400 by accident. Someone chose me. Someone who knew the system well enough to know I could not fight back. Derek asked if I wanted to call anyone. I said no. I meant it. The girls had their own lives now, their own battles. I had spent 22 years making sure they never had to carry my weight. I was not going to start now. That was my plan. My plan was wrong. I did not know that yet. What I did not know was that Grace had called my apartment the night before and gotten no answer. This was not unusual. I worked late. She left a message. She called again in the morning. No answer. This was unusual. She called the school. The secretary, a woman named Mrs. Patterson who had worked at Lincoln for 31 years and knew everything that happened before it happened, told Grace I had been arrested. Mrs. Patterson did not believe the charges. She told Grace exactly that. Your father did not do this, she said. Someone is lying. Grace called Hannah. Hannah called Abigail. Within 3 hours, all 3 of them knew. Within 6 hours, all 3 of them were on planes to Mississippi. I did not know they were coming. I was in my cell. The fluorescent lights buzzed. I was counting the cinder blocks in the wall. There were 247. I had counted them twice. I was thinking about the boots by my apartment door, the ones my father gave me. 31 years old. Solves held on with stubbornness. My father was a mechanic. He worked 47 years at a garage in Mobile, Alabama. He never made more than $28,000 in a single year. When he died, he owned 3 things worth anything. His toolbox, his watch, his boots. I got the boots. I wore them to his funeral. I wear them every day since. They are too worn to wear in public. I wear them when I am alone. They remind me of what a man can endure without breaking. I was thinking about those boots when the guard came and said I had visitors. I did not expect visitors. I followed the guard to the holding room. I sat in the hard chair. I waited. And then the door opened, and 3 women I had last seen as teenagers at an Olive Garden in Jackson walked in, and I realized I had made a significant miscalculation about what it meant to have daughters who had become the kind of women I raised them to be. That was the moment. The one where everything shifted. I looked at them. They looked at me. Hannah was in front, as always. She was wearing a gray suit that fit her like armor. Grace was behind her left shoulder. Abigail was behind her right. The formation was not accidental. I recognized it. I had trained soldiers once. I knew what a tactical entry looked like. They sat down. The guard left. Hannah spoke first. Her voice was calm. It was the calm of someone who had already decided what was going to happen and was simply informing you of the decision. Dad, she said, we know you didn't do this. We're going to prove it. Do not argue with me. I did not argue. I looked at Grace. Grace was already pulling documents out of her bag. I've been analyzing the bank records, she said. The digital trail is clean, but the timestamps are wrong. Someone forged the transfer authorizations. The IP addresses don't match your location. I looked at Abigail. She had a small notebook, the same kind I carried. Green cover. She caught my glance. I've been investigating Gerald Hackett for 3 months, she said. My paper was about to run a story on district-level fraud. We had no idea you were connected until yesterday. He's been embezzling for at least 5 years. He needed someone to frame. You were convenient. I sat there. I processed this. My daughters had built a case in less than 24 hours that my public defender had not managed in 3 weeks. I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Pride. Not the quiet version. The kind that fills your chest entirely. I did not show it. What do you need from me? I said. It was not a question. Hannah leaned forward. I need you to tell me everything you know about Gerald Hackett. Every conversation. Every interaction. Every time he looked at you in a way that felt wrong. I thought. I remembered. I had been cataloging details for 22 years. It was a skill from a previous life. I had not used it in a long time. It came back immediately. He drives a Lexus that costs more than his salary, I said. He wears a watch that cost $8,000. He told me once that janitors were invisible, and that invisible people were easy to blame. This was 14 months ago, at the district holiday party. He was drinking. I was refilling the coffee station. He did not realize I heard him. Hannah's expression did not change, but something behind her eyes hardened. He's going to regret that sentence, she said. This is the other thing about the girls I raised. When they decide something, the decision is final. The next 3 days moved fast. What I did not know then was that Hannah had already filed paperwork to become my legal counsel. She had taken a leave from her firm. She was risking her career. Grace had contacted a forensic accountant at the FBI field office in Jackson, a contact from her hospital work, a patient's family member, connections I did not know she had. Abigail had her entire newsroom digging into Hackett's finances. They found things, patterns, a house in the Cayman Islands, an account in the name of a dead relative, receipts for things a school district finance director should not be able to afford. I was not part of any of this. I was in a cell, waiting. I knew what they were doing. I also knew that they would succeed. Not because I believed in the system. Because I believed in them. I saw the girls one more time before the trial. They came to the holding room again. Grace had circles under her eyes. She had not slept in 36 hours. She was holding a folder with 140 pages of forensic analysis. She put it on the table. The FBI confirmed it, she said. Every transfer was initiated from Hackett's computer. He used your personnel file to create the account. He left a digital signature that matches 16 other fraudulent transfers from the past 4 years. Hannah looked at me. We have everything we need. The trial is tomorrow. We're going to destroy him. I nodded. I looked at Abigail. She had been quiet. She was holding Pepper, the stuffed rabbit. One ear missing. She had taken it from my apartment. She had asked the property manager to let her in. She said she needed it. She said, Dad, I remember the night you found us. I was 5. I was so scared I could not speak. You did not push. You waited. You were the first adult who ever waited for me. Her voice was steady. Tomorrow I am going to speak for you. I am going to tell the courtroom who you are, and everyone is going to hear it. I looked at the rabbit. I looked at my boots by the door of my apartment. I looked at the 3 women in front of me. I said, I am very glad I did not sell those boots. It was not the response they expected. It was exactly what I meant. They looked at each other. Hannah almost smiled. He does that, she said. Ignore it. The morning of the trial I woke up at 5:15 a.m. I did not sleep, I thought. I thought about 22 years of mopping floors, of parent-teacher conferences in work clothes, of skipping meals so the girls could get glasses, of the squeaky wheel on my cart that I never fixed, of the $217.64 I spent at Walmart the first morning, of the lemonade Hannah brought me when I fixed her bike chain, of the 3 50-cents in quarters Grace put on the counter, of Pepper sitting on the kitchen table every morning. I thought about Margaret. She would have been sitting in the front row. She would have known exactly what to say to the girls afterward. I would have let her say it. I would have just stood there, quiet, feeling the thing I always felt when she was in the room. That everything was going to be fine even when it looked like it was not. She was not here. But the girls were. And somehow that was the same thing. I walked into the courtroom at 8:47 a.m. I was wearing a suit. Hannah had brought it. It fit. She had always been good at details. The courtroom was not full. This was not a high-profile case. It was a local story about a janitor who supposedly stole money. The people there were mostly reporters. A few teachers from Lincoln. Mrs. Patterson. Reggie, who had come out of retirement for this. Doreen from the diner. I looked at the defense table. Hannah was already there. She looked at me and nodded once. The judge entered. Everyone sat. And then the prosecution called their first witness, Gerald Hackett. He walked to the stand. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly salary for a year. He had the expression of a man who was very confident he was going to win. He did not look at me. That was his first mistake. The second mistake was swearing to tell the truth. Hannah cross-examined him. Her voice was calm and precise. She asked about the transfer records. He said they were accurate. She asked about the authorization signatures. He said they were verified. She asked about his personal finances. He hesitated. His lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Hannah presented the forensic accounting report. She walked him through every transfer, every IP address, every inconsistency. The room got very quiet. Hackett's face went from confident to concerned to something else entirely. Hannah asked him point by point. Her questions were surgical. She had a folder, 140 pages. She did not need to look at them. She had memorized everything. After 47 minutes, Hackett stopped answering. His lawyer requested a recess. The judge denied it. Hannah said, "I have no further questions at this time." She sat down. She had not raised her voice once. Hackett left the stand. He looked smaller than he had before. Then I testified. I was not nervous. I had faced harder things than a courtroom. I answered the questions. Yes, I worked at Lincoln for 22 years. No, I never accessed the financial systems. No, I did not own a P.O. box. Yes, I knew Gerald Hackett. No, we never discussed money. Yes, I was the sole provider for 3 foster daughters. Yes, they all went to college. No, I did not receive any financial aid beyond my salary. No, I do not have retirement savings. Yes, I have a pair of work boots that are 31 years old. The prosecutor asked why that was relevant. Hannah said it established character. The judge allowed it. I described the boots. I described my father. I described what it means to keep something that still works even when everyone tells you to replace it. I do not know if the jury understood. I think some of them did. The final witness was Abigail. She was not on the original witness list. Hannah had called her as a character witness. The prosecutor objected. The judge asked to hear her testimony before ruling. Abigail walked to the stand. She was holding Pepper, the rabbit, one ear missing. The prosecutor made a comment. I did not hear it exactly. I saw something flicker across Abigail's face. Then she began to speak. Her voice was quiet. The room leaned forward to hear her. "My name is Abigail Keller," she said. "I am a reporter for the Nashville Chronicle. But before that, I was a 5-year-old girl hiding behind a dumpster in the rain with my 2 sisters and a stuffed rabbit named Pepper." She held up the rabbit. "This rabbit has been with me for 23 years. My mother gave it to me the day I was born. She died when I was 4. That is not part of the testimony. I just wanted you to know." She paused. "The man sitting at that table is not my biological father. He is the janitor who found 3 hungry, terrified, broken children hiding in a school gymnasium at 9:47 p.m. on a December night. He did not call anyone. He took us to a diner. He bought us pancakes. He spent $217.64 the next morning at Walmart, buying toothbrushes and clothes and food for 3 girls he had never met before." She paused again. The room was absolutely silent. No one moved. She continued. "He skipped meals so my sister could get glasses. He sold his truck so my other sister could have a laptop. He wrote in a green notebook every single night. I found it when I went to his apartment. There are 22 years of entries in that notebook. Every date, every expense, every small moment. He wrote down the first time my sister called him Dad. He wrote down the first time I laughed after my parents died. He wrote down every single thing that mattered. He never showed anyone. He never asked for recognition. I sat very still. I did not know she had the notebook. I had left it in the apartment. She had been there. She had found it. She looked directly at the jury. I am standing here because the man who raised me is being accused of a crime he did not commit by a man who has been stealing from children for half a decade. The evidence proves it. The forensic report proves it. But I wanted you to know something the evidence cannot show. She held up Pepper. When I was 6 years old, I asked him why he kept his work boots by the door even though they were falling apart. He said, because they remind me that something can be worn down and still hold together. I did not understand that then. I understand it now. He is not a thief. He is the most honest man I have ever known, and I am asking you to see him. She sat down. The rabbit was still in her hand. No one in the courtroom spoke for what felt like a very long time. The verdict came in at 4:12 p.m. Not guilty. On all counts. The real culprit was arrested within the hour. Gerald Hackett was led out of the building in handcuffs. He did not look at me. I did not need him to. Hannah hugged me. Grace hugged me. Abigail hugged me. Mrs. Patterson was crying. Reggie shook my hand so hard it hurt. Doreen said she would make me pancakes. I said I would like that. Outside the courthouse, the sun was setting. The sky was gold and crimson over Mississippi. The girls stood with me on the steps. I thought about the years. All of them. The hard ones and the good ones. I thought about my father's boots, about the squeaky wheel on the cart, about the sound of 3 small girls following me to a diner at 11:14 p.m. 22 years ago. I had spent my life thinking I was invisible. But I wasn't. They had always seen me. The only people who mattered had always seen me. We walked to the parking lot. My truck was there. Not the old one. A new one. Well, new to me. A 2012 Silverado. The girls had arranged it after the trial. I did not ask how. I got in. They got in with me. Hannah in the passenger seat. Grace and Abigail in the back. Pepper was on the dashboard. The rabbit. Still missing an ear. Still watching. I started the engine. I drove to the diner. Doreen made the pancakes. We sat at the same counter where it all started. The girls told me stories about their lives, about their jobs, about who they had become. I listened. I did not say much. I did not need to. At one point Abigail looked at me and said, "Dad, there's one thing I didn't say in court." I asked what it was. She said, "He doesn't lose, but he never says that himself." I looked at her. She was right. I never say it, but I also never lose. Not the things that matter, not when it counts. That night I went home to my apartment. The boots were by the door. I picked them up. I held them for a minute. Then I put them down. I went to the kitchen. I took out the green notebook. I wrote one final entry. Not final as in last. Final as in the one that closes a chapter. I wrote, "The girls saved me today. I have spent 22 years thinking I was the one saving them. That was never true. We were saving each other the whole time." I closed the notebook. I put it in my back pocket. I looked at the chair where Pepper used to sit. Abigail had taken him back. That was fine. He had done his job. He had been there so she was not alone. And now, none of us were. If this story stayed with you, join our family here by hitting like and subscribing. Real stories, real fathers, real strength. Thank you for being here.